Tallis whispered over to me, "Did you really have to pick George's fight song?" I didn't even know they had a song.
I'm surprised she didn't start barking at the end of it like they did.
Is it a whoop, whoop bark or a whoop, whoop? Or how does it go? All right, let's see. It's 20 to 11. People's tummies are growling, and a lot of folks, Sunday morning, when they leave worship service, will go somewhere to lunch. And what will the wait be like?
Depends on if you beat the Baptist or not.
That's why I was saying I'm going to preach it quick so we beat the Baptist Denny's, right? Of course, there's no Denny's around here, so people don't necessarily know that saying. But anyway, so we're going to leave here. Some people are going to leave here. You're going to get, if you don't get there in time, you're going to have a wait. And what's that like?
I hate it. I hate it.
You hate the wait. The longest waits. Have you ever made reservations? I've gotten pretty good the last few years, like Mother's Day or birthdays, to think ahead like a week or so and call our restaurant of choice and make a reservation. I mean, probably the first 25 years I didn't even think about it, but the last 4 or 5 years I pat myself on the back, I'll get on my shoulder. But longest reservation in history. Have you heard of Club 33? Disney. So 1967, it becomes public, but Walt Disney himself creates the Club 33, and he initially does it for investors. So today, if you want to join Club 33, it's only a small $25,000 initiation fee with $10,000 a year membership dues. Guess how long the reservation wait is to eat at Club 33 once you join? 14 years. That seems like an awful lot just to sit down and eat in Disney World. The Bible doesn't, at least I've read through it, and it doesn't really clearly spell out to me the benefits of being patient. It just simply says, be patient, it's good for you. I like to grill on charcoal. A lot of people like gas because fast. You light it up, you're ready to go. For me, charcoal just tastes better and it's worth the wait. It does. And it's almost therapeutic. You start the coals, you watch the fire get going, you got to do the timing. You wait till if you put them on too soon, you don't have a fire. If you wait too long, they burn out. So there's a timing thing, but it's kind of therapeutic. Sit out there. Tammy, I got a couple camp chairs from Bass Pro. Sit outside. Every once in a while when we grill, neighbors will stop by, which is strange. Oh, what are you doing? Well, what's it look like? So,
Got the cops on that guy. Surprised we don't get called to.
Yeah. Hey, there's a fire over there. So, some things definitely are worth the wait, right? And some things are worth, but we don't really like to try. What's the problem with patience? I want it now, right? Everyone says be patient. You try to teach little kids as they're growing up, be patient, right? They're waiting. Oh, my birthday is in 3 months. Oh, it's in 1 month. They do the countdown. Or, oh, it's almost Christmas time, right? And so, which by the way, we were in Hobby Lobby a couple weeks ago, and they've already got out all the Christmas trees. I mean, it was
along with
literally,
Halloween.
Huh?
Along with Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween, literally the week after the 4th of July. I mean, this is like the 8th or 9th of July, and we walk in, I don't remember what we're looking for, and I look to the left, and it's Christmas as far as you can see. 95 degrees out, and Christmas as far as you can see. We tell kids, be patient, but we can't necessarily explain the hows or the whys, but we know that it's good for us. The Bible has plenty to say about being patient. But James, chapter 5, which we're going to be today, James says, be patient for, or until, depending on your translation, the coming of the Lord. You should be waiting, anticipating. Patience usually has the connotation of expectancy, of desire, of looking forward to it. I mean, I don't have to be patient if I need to go to the dentist, because I don't want to go, and you just want to get it over with, right? Or I don't have to be patient about tax day. because it's coming and you got to face it, right? Or if you have to go to court or whatever it is. The things I don't want to face, they don't require any patience. It's the things that I long for and I hope to get to. Now, if you've read through your New Testament, you know the epistles are not the wives of the apostles, they're letters. Right? And actually, epistolatory letters were common before the scriptures were ever written. There's a format that was followed in the ancient world, and so politicians, landowners, people who were literate would write what are called epistles. And so the format is just basically a cut and paste. You know, here's the introduction, who I am, here's what I have to say, here's my salutations, here's my greetings, here's my exit, whatever. They're very common. Most of the epistles that you read in the New Testament, you've noticed a pattern. At the beginning, it's I'm Paul or whoever, and I'm doing what? I'm writing to a particular congregation usually, right? You know, to the church in Corinth, to the church, you know, in Colossae, to the church at Thessalonica. James doesn't do that. Which, by the way, in the Greek, it's not James. It's Jacob. I thought that was kind of interesting. James, or Jacob, who, by the way, does anyone remember who he is in the big story of the New Testament? Huh?
The brother of Jesus?
The brother of Jesus, right? And he was an immediate follower of Jesus and loved everything he said and did, right? No. No. He doesn't believe Jesus. Well, if you're who you say you are, you should go to the festival, right? John chapter 7. Apparently, from 1 Corinthians 15, James doesn't believe until the resurrection. So, in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that when Jesus is resurrected, he first appears to Cephas, who's Peter, then he appears to 500 brethren, and he says, many of whom are still alive, in other words, go question them. Then he appears to James, and then Paul says, then he appears to one who is unworthy, meaning himself. So James becomes a leader in the church. If you read through the book of Acts, he's there in Jerusalem. But James writes his epistle, and I like this, to a scattered people. When you read the introduction to the book of James, to the 12 tribes who are scattered. Now, he doesn't literally mean the 12 tribes of Israel. He's writing to mostly a Jewish believing audience, but they're scattered. How many of you are still in your hometown? I'd say 90%. Kevin, this is where you were born and raised? Anyone else born and raised in Kingsport? All right. Robin, Greg, Kathy? Yeah. The majority of the rest of us are from, Rodney's from Arkansas. We're from Illinois. Man, the memes about Illinois right now are just brutal. People are fleeing from that state. So most of us are from somewhere different. So I think there's a lot of application for us because we can connect with this idea of being scattered. And even though you guys are from here, you lived most of your adult life scattered in the military. So there's a lot of application. There's a lot that we can connect with. There's a lot that makes sense to us. If you read through the book of James, it's hard to miss the main undertone that ebbs and flows. And that is when life is too pleasant, it's easy to lose track of eternity. So I kind of like James because to me it's almost like the Proverbs of the New Testament. Because it's so practical, there's so much wisdom, there's so much there. So James chapter 5, verse 7, be patient therefore, brothers, some of your translations say brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth. And I did run through my mind yesterday that I'm going to get a packet of seeds, and I'm going to get little Dixie cups, and I'm going to fill them with dirt, and I'm going to give them all to you. I'm going to say, plant the seed and tell me what it is, right? But you can just enjoy my good intentions there. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it. So keep an eye out for this word patient. Starts off in verse 7, be patient. Be patient about it, the farmer, until he receives the early and the late rains. Are you familiar with the early and the late rains of the Palestine region? So they plant in the fall and they reap their harvest in the spring over there, right? And so there is a early rain which comes in the fall, which they want to plant right before that happens, but then there's a late rain that comes right before they harvest. And so for us, we don't think of rain as being critical to our everyday life because we're so far removed from an agrarian rhythm of life. Very critical for the farmer, right? Because the vast majority of humanity for at least 5,000 years had an agrarian base, right? The family farm. Everybody lived on the farm. You worked on the farm. Most of humanity lived with 3 generations in their household. Could you imagine that? That would be hard to sustain that. And then everyone is trying to farm, and you're taking care of the livestock. It's difficult. But do you know this? True story. The cultures that have the longest lifespan are cultures with 3 generations in their home. They probably also eat tofu, I don't know. But that's what happens. So very critical. So his audience, they're honing in on this. Yeah, we know about the rains. We know how critical it is. We know how we wait for this, right? So you also, there's that word, be patient. Establish your hearts. Guard your heart. Ground your heart. Get your heart focused, right? For the coming of the Lord is at hand. That's another way of saying it's right upon you. It could happen at any moment. Now, there are different schools of theology on the second coming of the Lord. Some people believe that there will be a rapture and then 3 or 4 years and then Christ will come back. I don't see that in the New Testament. I see that everything is fulfilled and Jesus could come back at any moment. So he is saying the coming is at hand. It could happen. So don't grumble against one another, brothers, that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. Jesus is ready to come back. I remember one time Jacob was probably a month old, maybe a month and a half old. And I'm laying in the bed. He's napping on my shoulder. I'm reading. And I'm reading through the Gospels. And I'm reading Jesus' account of the second coming, right? And Tammy, she came in the room to check on Jacob and me or whatever, and it startled me so much. I thought, this is Jesus coming through the door. I was so into the story. I was like, boom! That's the idea here. It's going to be unexpected, but it can happen at any moment. So the judge is standing at the door. So as an example of suffering, and here's that word patience again, right? Take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. I'm going to compare that to Hebrews chapter 11. The Hebrew author talks about all these people who wait for all these promises and look forward to all these things. And how does the Hebrew author conclude it, right? They all died in faith, not having received the promise, but having seen them, right, from a distance. They greeted them from afar, having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus, make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had an opportunity to return. But as it was, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God's not ashamed to be called their God. He has prepared for them a city. All those Old Testament prophets who are talking about the coming of the Messiah, they look for it eagerly, and it doesn't happen in their lifetime. 400 plus years after Malachi completes, Jesus comes on the scene. They don't get to see it in their lifetime. Jesus establishes his kingdom, and all those people around him are doing what? They're looking forward to the second coming. It doesn't happen, right? Not in their lifetime, but it's going to happen. So verse 11, behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast, faithful, right? That requires patience. You've heard of the steadfastness of Job. And you've seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. So be patient. Look forward to the second coming. Hard to do. Easier said than done. But one clear point comes through when you're thinking of the farmer as he's looking forward to the rain. When you think of the people who are looking for, prophesying about, longing for, and it doesn't happen, I'm just going to tell you right now, there's a lot that's not in your control. I had no control over that ice maker. I can't stop that ice maker. Well, I could probably tear it out of the wall, but then we get kicked out of here. There is so much that's out of our control. We like to have the illusion that we're in control. So you could say the bad news is there's a lot out of our control, but the reminder is that it's all in God's control. When the rains come, when the rains don't come. And that should be liberating. That should offer freedom. But I want to be in control, right? I want to go to the restaurant. I want to pick out what's on the menu. I want to pick out the clothes that I wear. I want to choose the vehicle that I drive, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to be in control. The simple stuff, yeah. You have free will. You and I have choices to make. But in the big picture, it's probably a good idea that we're not in control. So James says, be like the farmer, right? He's waiting for the precious fruit. Let me ask you a question. Is the farmer, while he's patiently waiting, is he waiting idly? There's always some type of implement that has to be repaired, sharpened, worked on. There's always some livestock that's got to be doctored, fed, moved from pasture to pasture, whatever. While he is waiting for those rains, and while he is waiting for the crop to grow, he's not just sitting there watching the news or reading the funny papers. He's busy doing something. James says we need to wait patiently. Is he really thinking we should be waiting idly? Isn't that the problem in Thessalonica? Right? Thessalonians, Paul says those who won't work shouldn't eat. What happened? They heard Jesus is coming back, so they're like, dude, let's kick back, man. I don't have to work. I don't have to do anything, right? Jesus is coming back, so, man, let's just kick back and wait. And he's like, no. You still have a life to live. We're to wait patiently, but we're not to wait idly. And unfortunately, whether you want to admit it or not, most of us are pragmatic. We lean towards the philosophy of pragmatism. Pragmatism says if it works, do it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. Now, how does that play out in the Christian faith? Jesus says if someone slaps you on the cheek, what? Turn the other cheek. Well, if I do that, people are going to take advantage of me. So I can't do that. Jesus says, be kind to those who persecute you. Pray for those who harass you. Well, if I do that, what are they going to do? They're going to walk all over me. I can't be a nice guy. I've got to, because that's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And whether we like it or not, we lean towards pragmatism. And pragmatism doesn't work. That's a funny way of putting it. Pragmatism isn't efficient when it comes to patiently waiting for the Lord, but not idly. Right? So we're supposed to wait. We're supposed to sharpen our patience. And we're still supposed to be living the Christian. My weight has fluctuated greatly through the years. I was in the best shape of my life right when I went to college. I weighed 198 pounds. I was competing as a power lifter, which for my structure, I was very much underweight. Most of the guys with my frame were competing in the 220. I couldn't gain weight to save my life. You're not going to believe this, but I was on a 10,000 calorie a day diet. Amino acids, protein shakes. No, I didn't do steroids, but I did everything else that I could get my hands on. I couldn't gain any weight. I went to college and boom, I put on 50 pounds. And it wasn't the 50 pounds I wanted either. I went from a 36 to a 40. And I didn't feel good about myself, but I've never been one to buy diet books or do any of the fad diets. I mean, Atkins himself died of a heart attack, so that, right? But I like to joke about dieting. And my favorite joke about dieting, whenever people talk to me, I'm going to start a diet, or what do you think about this diet? My favorite joke that I came up with, which is probably sarcastic and unappreciated, is the key word to diet is tomorrow. Okay? I just put it off till tomorrow. With the second coming of Christ, there's no key word of putting it off. But there is a phrase I think we should keep in mind, and it is, what are you waiting for? Literally, what are you waiting for? James says the coming, he's standing at the door. The second coming is at hand. Paul writes in his epistles as if he expects Jesus to come in his lifetime. The churches in the New Testament, they expected Christ to come in their lifetime. 1 Thessalonians 4, I would not have you ignorant brethren, is how the King James puts it. I don't want you to be ignorant. I don't want you to be uninformed. They're worried because people have died and Christ hasn't come back yet. Now, are those people going to miss out on the second coming? No, don't worry about that. Those who are dead, right, they're going to come down. We who are alive will meet them in the clouds and will be together for the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. What are you waiting for? Christ could come back before we walk out that door. Might not come back for 10,000 years. Could come back tomorrow. We don't know, but what are you waiting for? I know, and I'll close my eyes so that no one thinks I'm singling them out. Some of you listening to me have never read through your Bible. See, I didn't make eye contact. I'm not singling them out. What are you waiting for? Really? I mean, it would be nice to know what God has in store and how He wants me to live while there's still time to live. Some of you have someone in your life that's very dear to you, who you love, who is important, that doesn't know the Lord. Imagine that tonight Jesus is coming back. Now you've got a 12-hour window. How will you spend that next 12 hours? Convincing them, pleading with them, encouraging them, modeling for them, whatever. How would you share the importance? How would you reach that person? So because we know that the second coming of Christ is going to happen at any moment, how do we live our lives going forward? Number one, it sounds like such a cliche, but it's time to prioritize. Right? Man, if Jesus were to have signed off somewhere in the New Testament, though his hand never penned any of the letters, but if he would have signed off, or just someone wrote down when he said, okay, I will be back on, December 1st, whatever year, imagine what riotous lives, not righteous, riotous lives we'd live up until the end, right? Because we're going to come right up to the line. And, okay, well, now it's time to straighten up, because we know he's coming back next week. But he didn't. And so not to be a cliche, but it's time to prioritize. So let me finish with this so that we do beat the Baptist to lunch tower. If you've been planning, one day I just want to be more spiritual. What does that look like for you? Reading some Beth Moore books, listening to podcasts, whatever, just growing in your spirituality. If you want to be more disciplined, and Douglas Foster, Doug Foster, I think it's Doug Foster's the last name. Spiritual Disciplines, amazing book. Oh, amazing book. Spiritual Disciplines, whatever. It's a book on spiritual discipline. The book is great. I don't remember the title of the author very well. We went out to eat yesterday. I couldn't even remember what I was going to order. So, part-timers. You want to be more spiritual. You want to be more disciplined. You want to be more in touch with God. You want to be closer to God. You want to be more Christ-like. And I just want to leave you with the nagging, haunting thought. What are you waiting